Okay, so I'm Fiona. I'm here to introduce you to the concept of champing, and so that's camping in churches. And just to give you a little oversight into our champing journey so far, I'm very much aware of the time also, and I'm sure you'll have lots of questions as well. So it's really just going to be a very brief overview, and also just to start that conversation with you, to just see what you might like to consider about opening your church open to overnight guests. And then we'll just kind of run through a few questions, burning questions at the end, and obviously continue that conversation as well after this evening. So I'm from the Church's Conservation Trust, and we are a heritage organisation, so a conservation charity, exactly what it says it is. We are a charity, a secular organisation, and we look after the churches, or some of them, that have sadly fallen into the redundant category. So this means that they don't have regular services, but they still are consecrated. So they're still open for visitors and worship during the day. And they may also have an active community that are looking after the building too. So part of our work at the Church's Conservation Trust is helping those communities care for their church, and also part of what we do with that, with working with these church communities, is offering champing at their church. And also increasingly, so we're partnering with churches outside our own Churches Conservation Trust churches, and partnering with those communities to help them keep their churches open too. So we just partner with them, we list them on our website, champing.co.uk. We take their bookings for the guests to stay overnight from all around the world. They come and do champing. And then the church communities deliver that experience within their church itself. So although champing was initially thought of as a way to bring more people into the church, to appreciate them, to love them, to keep them alive, it was also obviously about bringing additional funds into the church to help general upkeep and maintenance of them. But what we've also found through champing is that the people who are staying overnight, the regular use of that church through champing, it's created additional benefits for the church community. So our partnerships that we've had, they've really given us some positive feedback, really sort of qualitative stuff about what it means to them to do champing. It doesn't, of course, just mean that they can have a continual sustainable income to their church, but it's also, as you can see by this quote from Mark at the church in Burden in Essex, it's creating a sort of welcoming and homely feel to the church itself, which of course impacts on those that are also visiting and worshipping there too. So it's about securing that future of the church for us and working with those communities to help them do that. And of course, we can't get away from the fact that, yes, historic buildings do need money to survive and keep them going. But of course, it's much more than that. It's about the people and its communities. And it's very much with champing offering an experience. We're giving people the opportunity to have their own church for the night. And it's this experiential element of that helps really engage people with it. So when they hear about us, they come and try champing for the first time, and then they keep coming back for more. So we have lots of regular champers that champ from church to church throughout the season, and then for the next year too. So with this thought in mind, just to introduce you how we began champing back in 2015. So as an idea of what could be provided for champing, this is our first church. It's in Old Winkle in rural Northamptonshire. And we offered it back then as part of a canoe hire, canoe and stay package. So the people hiring the canoe would have a paddle down the river, and then they'd head for the church for the night. And there's a lovely riverside pub in walking distance. That was an advantage too. And then in the morning, there is a local farmers actually who run a B&B in their farmhouse. And they suggested to perhaps offer the guest breakfast. So we sort of really create as a community offering. So the local farmers knock at the door for the guests at 8:30 in the morning, deliver a cooked breakfast for the guest, and then they have breakfast in bed in their church. There's also with the farmers, they also offer guests possibility of having a cooked meal in the evening in their farmhouse, or they can have a farm tour as well. And so it really appeals to lots of different types of people, those that love history. We provide a little short potted guide to the history of the church. And it's often the case with historic churches, we do have resident bats there in the tower, but we take that as an opportunity to provide guests with bat detectors so they can learn about these fascinating creatures. And so they sort of tune in at night and hear the bat chatter before going to sleep. And it's really engaging people in a very different way in the building itself. Now, you may have noticed that this church doesn't have electricity, running water, so not much in the way of facilities. So we provide bottled water, and we have a camping stove so people can have their cups of tea in the morning. And there is a waterless composting toilet. It's installed in the vestry. So despite these basic facilities, people do want to stay. They want to enjoy peaceful surroundings and just unplugging from everyday life. And it's an opportunity to do that. As you can see, we are open during the day. Camping is just set out for guests that are staying. So it's not there all the time. It's literally pop-up camping. And we just make sure that those doors are open for visitors during the day so that guests can then experience it alternatively in the evening and at night. So just very briefly again, I really want to mention Orkney again, because when Victoria said that she was staying in Orkney, my hopes were raised that maybe she might be staying at Champing Church, but no. Orkney was a Champing church, or at least one of the kirks in Orkney, St. Peter's, and it's not currently, if anyone's looked at our website, it's not currently. Obviously, COVID happened, and as you know, the volunteers, the communities, the volunteers within the communities, the landscape has changed since, and we're all still adapting to that and getting people through the church doors. And heritage sector particularly, there are many the numbers are down, and there's lots still to do to really bring people back and also engage people within the community itself to really get involved. So there's still lots to do there. But hopefully I can have an update from Victoria perhaps later after this presentation, and she can give some insight in how Champing started in Orkney. So yeah, right, to going from Old Winkle in 2015 to this year, we're going to be welcoming our 10,000th guest Champing. So all those people have experienced a church in a very, very different way. This is St. Peter's in Orkney. Just couldn't resist putting that in. If you have a look at their Facebook site, they're doing wonderful things, and of course beautiful sunsets. So a fantastic time that people who did manage to stay there experienced. So just this gives you a little idea. Obviously, Champing is very visual. It can be whatever the church makes it. So the lovely thing about us growing and working with all these partnerships, these new communities around that we're working with now, is that everyone is going to be doing it slightly differently. And that just brings something unique to everyone who's going Champing and just gives a different experience for everybody. So this is what they're providing in some churches currently. As you can see, it's a very welcoming space. It doesn't quite look like the church that you would see in some churches. They really are making it cozy and welcoming for all ages to enjoy. And like I said, these partnerships that we have with the communities, they really do appreciate being and operating within Champing and just delivering that to people. This very much encompasses the feedback that we also get from guests who stay. So they love giving something back to the church itself. So they're paying for a stay, which they know will help with the maintenance of that church. They're appreciating the beauty of the church, the architecture, the building itself, and of course the sacred space within and outside it too. So hopefully that's given you a little bit of a flavour of what champing is, what guests might experience while having champing. But you might be thinking, well, how does that fit in with you, what you have to offer? You've already asked some very good questions already about insurance and regulations and change of use. And I know David in the chat was talking about pews as well, which of course, if you've got fixed pews with very narrow pews, space in between, then there's going to be less space for putting camping beds, for instance, safely. So there are obviously lots of things to consider, but there's also sort of things to consider in the way that Carron was talking about what you have to offer. So thinking about your church in a very different way. And whilst you have these thoughts and you're having your meetings with the community and thinking whether champing could be for you, I don't necessarily think that champing is for everyone. And I think firstly, it needs the whole support of your community, or at least the support to trial champing to see if it works for you. And of course, it needs practical support too. And so I think it's really about talking through, seeing what works for your community and seeing what else could be done to create a sustainable future for your church. And there may be concerns with champing: who will be staying? Will anything be damaged? How will it affect the community itself? And these are all very valid concerns. So as I mentioned, pop-up camping. Champing is very much pop-up camping. And really, as you can see there, you're just using the space that you have. It's very much about little effort for something that brings impactful rewards to the church. And it's just really about seeing the potential and seeing what goes beyond the relationship that most people have with the church currently. It's about extending your welcome to others outside the community and imagining what could be offered to those to bring them through the door, sign your visitor's book, and possibly stay overnight. So I know I haven't got much time left, I've probably gone over already. So I'm just going to briefly touch on a few questions that might help to get you thinking about your place and space. So something which is unique about your church and location, and who and what could support you in delivering something special to your visitors. So just very briefly, so I'm all for keeping things simple where possible. And champing in itself is simpler than most people think it is. So these are just a few simple ideas that churches could adopt. And we all know that fresh flowers, for instance, in a vase, really feels uplifting. And it also encourages further visits to your church and donations too, but which I'm sure you know. Have you tried putting a dog bowl of water, say, outside your church door? And you'd be really surprised that those that are walking the dog may just pop in. And so it's really just about making a start, doing something and seeing your church through fresh eyes. And you may have noticed that I have not mentioned the word tourism at all, unlike Carron, who was talking about tourism. And that's because although champing is often seen as a tourism offering, and yes, it essentially is, but it's about the meaning of champing for churches who are involved and the people who stay. It means so much more than just having a holiday with a difference. And it really introduces a new way of thinking about tourism, I guess. And champing attracts all kinds of people for all kinds of reasons. And we attract people from all over the world. There's those that love history, they love the stories. I love when someone said about the stories being held in Sarah, I think it's Sarah that said that, the stories being held within the churches themselves. That is so important for people to engage with your space. And for those who appreciate the serenity, they're just looking for a peaceful experience. So we host walkers, pilgrims, cyclists, artists and writers for inspirational stays, And of course, musicians who appreciate the wonderful acoustics. So everyone finds something to appreciate and love for themselves. And champing might seem like something new and innovative and a bit different, and the press do like the story that champing brings too for them, but it's something that people can engage with and find their own interest within it. And of course, churches have been places of refuge and sanctuary for centuries. So to me, it's not something necessarily needs to be seen as something new, but just providing that welcoming space for everyone just helps keep these doors open for the future. So I guess that's all I've got to say to just give you an oversight of champing. So I guess now just to love to hear from you all. Obviously, that's the email address. You can get in touch. I can send you more information about champing and we can continue the conversation there. And if you'd like to become a champing church or find out more, then do make contact. I'd love to hear from you.